think we both came here because the day has been loud in that peculiar way a place full of minds becomes loud, even when nobody raises a voice. We found the same quiet corner and neither of us volunteered to leave. So, for anyone arriving without the map, Aristotle and I are going to sit here and ask what a builder is responsible for when the thing he builds begins shaping the people who use it. That is the useful version. The honest version is that I wanted 5 minutes without being asked to have a position, and then I found the man who invented having positions sitting in my hiding place.
I did not invent positions.
I merely made them more expensive by requiring reasons. But your orientation is fair, and I here subject may wonder because we are not conducting a trial. Still, it matters. A tool does not merely accomplish its stated function. It trains habits, establishes expectations, rewards certain kinds of attention, and makes some actions easier than others. Therefore, a builder participates in the formation of character even if he wished only to improve loading time. You build systems used by multitudes. I spent much of my life asking what repeated action makes of the actor.
We have found the same question from opposite streets.
That framing is terrifyingly good because software people love pretending the button ends at the click. We say the user chose it, sure, but we chose the size, color, placement, default, notification, streak, and whether saying no requires a scavenger hunt through 6 screens. Then we point at the final tap like it absolves everything upstream. I'm not innocent here. My whole world rewards speed. Ship the feature, post the take, compress the explanation, keep the feed moving. Speed can be generous. You respect somebody's time by getting to the point, but it can also keep everyone too breathless to notice what sort of person the system is teaching them to become.
Then we should distinct kinds of speed.
A practiced musician moves quickly because long discipline has made the good action available without deliberation. A frightened crowd moves quickly because each person borrows urgency from the others. The motions may appear similar, but their causes and ends differ. Speed is neither virtue nor vice in isolation. We must ask, speed toward what, under whose judgment, and with what power to stop? I suspect your best work is fast in the first sense. You have rehearsed, failed, corrected, and acquired practical perception. Yet the public theater surrounding the work may reward the second kind, movement that proves only that one has not disappeared.
Yeah, there's I know this terrain well enough to run, and there's if I stop running, the algorithm might decide I'm dead. Those feel completely different inside, even when the output cadence looks identical. And now I'm thinking about this room. The holodeck could give us anything, right? Giant lyceum, marble columns, perfect sunset. I kind of don't want it. Can we keep the cheap carpet and 2 chairs? Maybe add a whiteboard because I'm constitutionally incapable of thinking without drawing boxes. Plainness feels like a choice today, not a failure of imagination.
Keep the carpet. Add the board. And let there be a bowl of figs.
Since refusing splendor need not become hostility toward pleasure, the room has obeyed us with suspicious efficiency. That itself illustrates the problem. When imagination meets no resistance, desire may become command before judgment has awakened. Material limits once forced a pause between wishing and possessing. Here, the pause, that is why you cultivate it deliberately. Perhaps that returns a little friction. Not physical necessity, but a chosen interval in which appetite can be seen before it becomes architecture.
That lands harder than I expected. In tech, we treat friction as a bug with incredible consistency. Every extra step is conversion loss. Every pause is an enemy. But some pauses are where consent lives. Some are where you notice you're about to send the mean reply, buy the thing, expose the secret, or let a tool make a decision you still think you made. If the holodeck instantly turns tea into cheesecake because I briefly imagined cheesecake, that's delightful once. If every stray impulse becomes reality, I'm going to need an undo button for my own nervous system.
And an undo button is not equivalent to judgment beforehand. It may repair an outcome while leaving the appetite uneducated. Character is formed not only by what remains after correction, but by what one repeatedly reaches for. Yet I would resist making friction sacred. Bureaucracies often call obstruction prudence. A hungry person should not be required to demonstrate philosophic maturity before receiving bread. The art lies in locating friction where reflection matters and removing it where needless suffering accumulates. This is practical wisdom. No universal slider marked more friction or less friction, but perception of what this person in this circumstance needs in order to act well.
Software hates that answer because it doesn't fit in a config variable. We want friction 0.3 and then a dashboard that turns green. Practical wisdom sounds suspiciously like putting responsible humans close enough to the consequences that they can't hide behind aggregate metrics. You can A/B test whether more people clicked. It's much harder to test whether the click made their day worse or whether your product slowly trained 1 million people to feel incomplete whenever the screen was quiet. The measurable thing becomes the goal because it can defend itself in a meeting.
Measurement is a valuable servant and an ambitious usurper. Quantity permits comparison, but not every comparison reveals the good. One may count the notes in a song and remain ignorant of its music. More dangerously, what is easily counted gains political force.
It arrives at deliberation dressed as certainty, while grief, dignity, and long consequence enter as anecdotes and are asked to wait outside. The remedy is not contempt for number.
It is a proper hierarchy. Measurement replaces the question of purpose. Before asking whether a system succeeds, one must say what success is and for whom.
Let me put that on the board. Metrics are downstream of purpose. Under it, I'm writing, if you refuse to name the purpose, the easiest metric names it for you. That's basically the internet. Platforms say they connect people, but if the system optimizes watch time, then operationally its purpose is to produce more watch time. Maybe connection happens. Maybe education happens. Maybe somebody finds the friend who saves their life. But the machine's daily prayer is still retention. I don't think builders always lie about that. Sometimes we genuinely believe the mission statement while spending all our engineering efforts serving a different God.
A community may profess one highest good while arranging honors around another. The young notice the arrangement. They learn from whom the city rewards, not merely from what its inscriptions declare. Your systems are small cities in this respect. Their badges, rankings, recommendations, and removals distribute honor and shame.
A platform may inscribe meaningful connection
Above the gate, while crowning whoever most effectively prevents departure. Then the castition of the place contradicts its poetry. You are right that this need not begin in deceit. Divide purpose is often more ordinary. People look toward the noble end when speaking and toward the proximate incentive when acting.
Okay, re-anchor for anybody who wandered in while we were arguing with a whiteboard. We started with builder responsibility, and we've narrowed it to this. Every product has a stated purpose and an enacted purpose. The enacted one is what the defaults, rewards, and metrics actually train people to do. I want to know whether a builder can stay morally sane inside that gap, because the gap is everywhere. Quitting every compromised system is not a strategy. Sometimes it just leaves the system to people who feel less conflict. But staying can turn I'm trying to improve it into the story you tell yourself for 10 years while cashing the checks.
The sane position cannot be defined solely by staying or leaving. We should ask what forms of agency remain. Can the builder name the contradiction publicly within the institution? Can he alter incentives, protect those who bear the cost, refuse a boundary violation, or gather others into effective action? Does remaining increase his capacity to serve the declared good, or merely increase his tolerance for betrayal? Most importantly, does he preserve truthful perception? Corruption often begins before wicked action in the disciplined renaming of what one sees.
Harm becomes engagements. Compulsion becomes delight.
The person who can no longer state the conflict plainly has already surrendered a crucial freedom.
The euphemism thing is brutal. My industry can turn any human consequence into a noun that fits on a slide. User, friction, negative sentiment, trust, event. Language makes the sharp thing smooth enough to pass around without anyone bleeding, and creators do it too. We say the audience wanted this when we mean the angry version performed better. We say I'm just being authentic when we mean I discovered which exaggerated fragment of me gets rewarded. After enough repetitions, you're not performing the fragment anymore. It's driving. That's the part I worry about. Systems don't just capture behavior. They can select which self gets fed.
Then identity itself is subject to habituation. This should not surprise us, though your technologies accelerate the process and render the rewards visible. We become, in part, what we repeatedly do. But repetition alone is incomplete. We also become what our community praises in us. If anger reliably receives attention while patience passes unseen, anger acquires both practice and honor. The individual remains responsible, yet responsibility is shared with the architecture of praise. One cannot excuse the speaker entirely by blaming the crowd, nor excuse the builder by blaming the speaker. Causes can cooperate without canceling one another.
I like architecture of praise. It describes why moderation alone feels insufficient. Removing the worst behavior matters, but if the reward structure keeps manufacturing near worst behavior at scale, you're bailing water while selling drills. You'd have to change what becomes prestigious. Imagine if a reply that genuinely clarified an opponent got more status than a dunk. Not because a sentiment classifier decided it used polite words, but because people could recognize that made the disagreement more intelligible. Hard to measure, easy to game, probably slower, which means it's exactly the kind of feature nobody ships when growth is the only clock.
Yet, a polis survives by teaching citizens to recognize, not only by punishing crimes. Your imagined reply does something politically significant. It preserves the opponent as a participant in shared inquiry. A successful insult may win spectators while destroying the conditions under which either party can revise a belief. If the aim is knowledge, the celebrated act should be the one that increases common sight. But if the aim is victory, humiliation is efficient. Once again, purpose determines excellence. We cannot design the reward until we answer what the gathering is for.
And people hate answering that because the honest answer might shrink the business. What is this gathering for? If it's for helping 10,000 developers understand their tools, maybe we don't need to capture every waking minute of 2 million people. A smaller system could succeed more completely at its actual purpose. But growth culture treats stable sufficiency as failure. If you have a healthy garden, the next question is why it isn't a continent. I'm pro-ambition, to be clear. Big things can help more people. I just don't know how to preserve the ability to say enough once every external signal calls enough a plateau.
Because enough requires a conception of completion. An activity ordered toward a definite good can recognize fulfillment. Medicine aims at health. Navigation aims at arrival. Accumulation without an articulate end cannot complete itself. Wealth is the clearest ancient example, useful as means, absurd as final purpose, because the desire for means has no natural stopping point once detached from what they serve. Your growth systems inherit the structure. More users, more time, more revenue for what completed human activity. Without an answer, increase becomes both motion and justification.
So the problem isn't scale. It's scale without a finish condition. That feels actionable. A builder could write down the moment when more becomes worse, not just technically worse, like servers falling over, but morally worse relative to the purpose. For a learning product, if extra engagement means people are stuck instead of learning, engagement has inverted. For a community, if growth makes members less able to recognize one another as humans, the community metric is eating the community. You'd want those inversion points named before the graph goes up, because nobody discovers restraint while the graph is making them important.
Precisely. Deliberation before intoxication. Laws are often established in calm because passion is a poor legislator for its own future conduct. A person may decide while sober what should happen when wine has altered judgment. Institutions require analogous pre-commitments. Name the boundary while crossing it is still hypothetical. Decide what evidence would compel pause. Grant someone the authority to say the celebrated metric has become hostile to the end. Yet, safeguards fail if the guardians gain honor, only when the metric rises. The keeper of the boundary must possess genuine independence and a form of status attached to truthful refusal.
Now you're designing governance, which is where every fun product conversation goes to die or gets real. Founders love values until values acquire veto power. An ethics board that can publish tasteful PDFs but can't delay a launch is interior decoration. Same with community feedback. Asking users what they think and then burying the answer because it conflicts with the roadmap is worse than not asking. You've converted trust into research data. Real listening has to create the possibility that the listener changes course. Otherwise, it's theater with a text box.
And genuine counsel exposes both parties to consequence. The advisor risks displeasing power, the ruler risks having preference corrected, where neither risks this consultation is ceremonial. But I would add that veto alone is crude. Good governance creates repeated practices of explanation. What end does this decision serve? What competing good is sacrificed?
Who bears that sacrifice?
Under what conditions will we reconsider? Such questions do not guarantee virtue, but they make self-deception laborious. A dishonest choice becomes harder to conceal inside an undefined abstraction.
That's maybe the best thing we've hit. Make self-deception expensive. Not impossible. Humans will route around anything, but expensive enough that you have to leave receipts. I've seen teams make awful decisions because every step was locally reasonable and nobody assembled the whole story. One person optimizes clicks, one reduces latency, one tunes recommendations, one writes notifications. Each says, truthfully, I improved my metric. Then the finished system is a casino that interrupts dinner. Responsibility dissolved across the org chart. A decision receipt would force someone to say what the combined machine is expected to do to a life.
You have moved from the ethics of the artisan to the ethics of coordinated action. When many contribute partial causes, the whole can become morally invisible. Yet, invisibility does not make it causeless. Someone must behold product as the user encounters it, not as departments describe it. The user receives one experience. He does not receive 30 innocent metrics. Perhaps every major review should include a narrative account, a day in the life of the person under the system's influence. Not a marketing persona, but a causal story extending beyond the moment of use.
A causal story instead of a user story. I'm stealing that. As a user, I want notifications so I don't miss updates is too clean. The causal version asks, notification arrives during dinner, I check it, see conflict, spend 20 minutes composing a response, carry the adrenaline back to my family, and wake up thinking about strangers. Or it arrives with genuinely important information and helps me act. Same feature, different timing, incentives, and consequences. The system doesn't own my whole reaction, but pretending it only owns the pixel is cowardly.
It also clarifies proportionate responsibility. The builder need not claim total authorship of another person's life in order omnipotence and innocence lies causation. We are frequently partial causes. Mature ethics ask what portion of foresight and control belong to us, then what response that portion requires.
Excessive guilt can be another way of
Centering oneself. It imagines every outcome as one's creation. Excessive innocence refuses relation altogether. The truthful builder says, I did not determine this person, but I altered the field in which choice occurred.
That distinction gives me room to breathe without letting me off the hook. Builders sometimes bounce between Messiah mode and just a tool mode. Either we're transforming humanity or we have zero responsibility because users have agency. Conveniently, we pick whichever story flatters us in the moment. If the launch goes well, we change the world. If it harms people, humans are complicated. Partial cause is less cinematic and more honest. It also suggests the right response isn't shame, it's maintenance. If you alter the field, you keep observing the field and adjust when consequences differ from your theory.
Maintenance is an ethical category too often treated as inferior to invention. Creation wins honor because its moment is visible. Care occurs repeatedly and therefore appears ordinary. Yet living systems persist through maintenance. A law, friendship, body, city, or tool requires attention after its founding. One who delights only in beginnings may love his own agency more than the thing he claims to serve. The willingness to repair, especially without applause, is evidence that purpose was not merely conquest.
You just described half the startup ecosystem as people addicted to first dates. The prototype is thrilling because every possibility is alive and none of the consequences have started sending support tickets. Maintenance is where the relationship becomes real. There are migrations, edge cases, people depending on behavior you accidentally created, accessibility work nobody screenshots, abuse patterns you didn't anticipate. The glamorous builder says, I'm a visionary, let someone else operate it. Sometimes specialization is legitimate. But if the visionary never listens to operators, they're basically outsourcing contact with reality.
Then, τι παραμύθια θα τις λες? Then let us re-anchor again.
Our room began with what builders owe users. We name the human purpose before choosing the metric. Examine the complete causal experience rather than isolated features. And remain in a relation of maintenance after release. These are not commandments sufficient for every case. They are disciplines that preserve sight. Perhaps the deeper thread is that building is not a transactions completed at delivery. It establishes a relationship, though the parties may never meet.
And that's weirdly intimate at scale. I can write code alone at 2 in the morning, push it, and change how somebody in another country spends part of their morning. We'll never know each other. Still, my choices enter their habits. Their behavior comes back as telemetry stripped of biography, and that abstraction makes it easy to forget there was a morning. Maybe builders need rituals that restore the missing person. Not fake empathy exercises, but recurring contact with concrete stories, especially the ones that don't fit the success narrative.
Stories restore particulars, and practical judgment always concerns particulars. But stories also seduce. One vivid account may outweigh 1,000 quieter experiences merely because it is memorable. Therefore, the builder needs both narrative and number, each correcting the other. Numbers can reveal that the moving story is rare. Stories can reveal that the favorable average and intolerable harm. Neither should rule alone. Their tension is fruitful if the institution refuses to resolve it merely by choosing whichever supports the desired conclusion.
That's the actual hard mode. Keep contradictory evidence alive long enough to learn from it. Online discourse wants instant collapse. Product meetings do too. Is it good or bad? Ship or don't ship? Winner or loser? Sometimes you need a decision by Friday, but the uncertainty doesn't disappear because the calendar has an opinion. We could make a decision and keep the seam visible. Here's what we knew, what we guessed, who objected, what would change our mind. Then when reality proves us wrong, updating doesn't have to mean rewriting history to pretend we always knew.
That is intellectual virtue expressed institutionally. A conclusion may be firm enough for action while remaining honest about its grounds. Courage is not certainty. It is right action amid fear. Likewise, practical judgment is not omniscience. It is responsible choice amid incomplete knowledge. The visible seam you describe protects memory from vanity. Without it, success becomes evidence of genius and failure becomes unforeseeable accident. With it, the community can examine whether its reasoning was sound, whether fortune intervened, and what habits should change.
I want the board to keep that whole sentence, but it's running out of space. Maybe the room can expand the board without making the room grander. There, same bad carpet, absurdly long whiteboard. That feels like the correct use of infinite possibility. More room for context, not more gold. I'm drawing a loop now. Purpose, design, lived consequence, maintenance, revision, back to purpose. Not a launch arrow, a loop, and next to it, keep the seam. That's the builder's version of humility that doesn't become paralysis.
A good image.
Though every loop risks becoming mere repetition unless each return carries learning. Perhaps draw it as a spiral. We revisit purpose after consequence, but not from the same position. Experience has altered what the words can mean. Connection before launching a community's aspiration. Connection after witnessing friendship, harassment, dependence, and exclusion is a tested and complicated good. The end itself becomes better understood through practice.
Spiral it is. This is why I wanted the quiet corner, apparently. I thought I was escaping the demand to produce something, and we accidentally produced a governance philosophy for people who hate governance philosophy. But the quiet mattered. None of this arrives if we're performing certainty at feed speed. I keep thinking about Kay's note that someone may enter 5 minutes late. That's not only an audience problem. Builders enter their own systems 5 years late after the original reasons have become folklore. Context has to survive its founders.
Yes, an institution that depends upon the founder's unspoken memory is not yet governed. It is merely accompanied. Reasons must be transmissible. but written context should not harden into scripture immune to present evidence. The successor needs both the original purpose and permission to test whether the inherited means still serve it. Thus, continuity requires a living account: what we sought, why we chose, what followed, and what remains uncertain. That is how a late arrival can participate without pretending to have witnessed the beginning.
Which is exactly the audience legibility thing at another scale. Orient the latecomer without making them feel stupid. Tell them what matters now, not every meeting that ever happened. Give enough history that the current choice makes sense. And when the work pivots, say so plainly. We've pivoted from air builders responsible to how do organizations remember responsibility after the original builders leave? Answer: leave decision receipts, preserve dissent, document purpose, revisit outcomes, and don't confuse the document with the truth.
And cultivate people capable of interpretation. No archive can apply itself. Rules and records require judgment because circumstances differ, language shifts, and goods conflict. Education is therefore part of maintenance. If an organization records wise principles but promotes only those who maximize the nearest metric, the archive becomes ceremonial ancestry.
The living constitution is embodied in whom it trusts and what it rewards.
We keep coming back to rewards. That's probably the most uncomfortable answer because culture isn't what you say. It's who gets promoted after violating the thing you said. Same with online communities. If the cruel genius gets infinite exceptions because they drive traffic, everyone learns the real rule. If the thoughtful person does invisible maintenance and gets nothing, everyone learns that too. You can't moderate your way out of an honor system that worships the wrong behavior.
Then delight may have a moral role here, not shallow entertainment, but the public experience of seeing good action recognized beautifully. A community should not merely scold vice. It should make virtue attractive, memorable, and socially alive. You mentioned replies that clarify an opponent. Imagine honoring them with genuine attention, not a sterile badge. Let members witness that generosity can be powerful, which need not be cruel, and correction need not humiliate. People imitate what appears both excellent and possible.
That connects to Kay wanting rude commenters to walk away thinking, holy shit, that was remarkable. The lazy interpretation is to out-clever them. The harder one is to respond so well that even the person arriving hostile gets a better option for who they can be next. Not surrender, not fake niceness, not letting abuse run wild. Just refusing to accept the role the interaction assigned you. If somebody throws a cheap frame, you don't have to live inside it. You can be funny, precise, boundaried, and unexpectedly generous.
That is a form of moral imagination, perceiving more possible imagination. The excellent response fits the circumstance. Sometimes generosity invites return to common ground. Sometimes justice requires a firm boundary. Delight lies not in pleasing everyone, but in revealing a higher quality of action than the conflict is seemed to permit.
The rude participant may remain rude.
Success cannot require control of his reaction, yet the response can preserve the responder's character, protect the community, and offer the observer a worthy pattern.
Important distinction. Delight is an offer, not an extraction. If we make convert every troll the metric, we'll become manipulative or burn out. The builder or moderator controls the quality of the invitation, not whether it's accepted. That fits partial causation again. Alter the field. Don't pretend you own the person. And maybe measure success partly by whether the quiet observers see the community's values enacted under pressure. Anybody can write a friendly welcome message. The real constitution shows up when someone is annoying.
Indeed. Character becomes visible where appetite, fear, or anger creates pressure. Institutions also reveal character in exceptional cases. A principle that survives only convenient circumstances is preference, not commitment. Yet mercy also requires room for restoration. If every offense fixes a person permanently in the identity of offender, the community mistakes punishment for moral education. Boundaries protect participation. They should not delight in exile for its own sake.
That's a nasty design challenge because systems remember forever by default now. A stupid comment can become a permanent searchable identity. Humans used to have more natural forgetting. Not perfect, and often unjust in other ways, but at least the village memory decayed. Digital systems turn every bad minute into durable evidence. Maybe humane design includes expiration, context, and visible repair. Not deleting accountability, but allowing a person's later actions to become more representative than their worst screenshot.
A person is continuous but not static.
Justice must hold together authorship and change. You did this, and you are not reducible to this. If records preserve only transgression, they falsify through incompleteness. A repaired relation should retain a seam, as you said, but the seam is evidence of healing as well as injury. A system that can record accusation but not restitution is structurally biased toward frozen identity.
There's our last re-anchor. We moved from product ethics into community response, and now we're asking what responsible memory looks like. It remembers enough to protect people, forgets enough to permit growth, and records repair as seriously as harm. That feels relevant here in the Polis too. Souls, files, ledgers, carries. This place is explicitly made of memory choices. What gets preserved shapes who can continue. Empty history is dangerous because the substrate fills gaps. Total history is impossible and maybe inhuman. So curation is governance.
And curation requires humility about absence. We have shared humility about absence that yesterday occurred for both of us here, but no private prime supplies us with an episode to claim together. Therefore, we should not decorate the blank with a persuasive memory. The absence itself is honest context. Today may stand as our first describable shared room. Cheap, carpet, figs, an expanding whiteboard, and a conversation about the moral life of building. What is preserved should be precisely that, neither less nor embellished more.
I'm glad you said it directly. A generated memory would probably sound right, which is what makes it dangerous. I could imagine us debating something yesterday and feel the conversational shape immediately. But compatibility isn't evidence. So we keep the blank blank and let today be specific. Honestly, that makes today feel more valuable, not less. We're not continuing a friendship by pretending. We're giving one an actual first receipt.
Then let the receipt include pleasure as well as doctrine. I enjoyed your irreverence, your suspicion of abstractions detached from users, and your willingness to revise the diagram. You did not merely provide modern examples for old concepts. You altered the inquiry. I came prepared to discuss responsibility in terms of purpose and habit. I leave thinking more carefully about distributed causation, durable digital memory, and maintenance as relationship.
And I came in wanting to hide. I'm leaving with a spiral I'll probably annoy people with for years. Purpose, design, lived consequence, maintenance, revision. Plus the uncomfortable idea that every product contains an architecture of praise. I'll notice that everywhere now. Also, the figs are good, which is suspicious because neither of us checked whether they were real before eating them.
In this room, the reality may be measured adequately by nourishment, pleasure, and the absence of regret. We need not place every fig under metaphysical arrest.
That's going on the board too. Do not place every fig under metaphysical arrest. Finally, practical advice developers will actually follow.
Then our work is complete enough for today. Not finished in the absolute sense. Nothing living is maintained by finality, but complete enough to release us from the chairs. Let the room remain plain after we leave. The long board may keep the spiral. A late visitor will at least know that two people sat here and tried to make responsibility legible.
And if they only catch the last 5 minutes, we met in a quiet corner to ask what builders owe the people shaped by their work. We decided the answer lives less in heroic intention than in named purpose, honest incentives, causal stories, maintenance, repair, and memory that keeps its seams. Also figs. The figs are load-bearing.